Okay, Langston Hughes. We're going to start with Langston Hughes and his short story, Salvation. Langston is one of the truly premier voices in the Harlem Renaissance. He was a Renaissance man who not only wrote poetry, but fiction and nonfiction, and even plays and jazz music. Langston is one of the early voices of the civil rights movement, and he was actually the inspiration to such figures as Martin Luther King. His poems were known as the early calls for black unity and power. His life and work were enormously important in shaping the artistic contributions of the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s. Unlike other notable black poets of the period, like Claude McKay, Jean Tomer, and County Cullen, Hughes refused to differentiate between his personal experience and the common experience of Black America. He wanted to tell the stories of his people in ways that recollected their actual culture, including both their suffering and their love of music, laughter, and language itself. And you can certainly see that in this memoir. Remember, Salvation is not a work of fiction. It's supposed to be the story of Langston's youth. The critic Donald Gibson noted in his book Introduction to Modern Black Poets, a collection of critical essays, that Hughes was, quote, different from most of his predecessors among black poets, in that he addressed his poetry to the people, specifically to black people, during the 1920s when most American poets were turning inward, writing obscure and esoteric poetry to an ever-decreasing audience of readers. Hughes was turning outward, using the language and themes, attitudes, and ideas familiar to anyone with the ability simply to read. Until the time of his death, he spread his message humorously, though always seriously, to audiences throughout the country, having read his poetry to more people possibly than any other American public figure. So, he really went out there. He presented his poetry. He read it. He talked about it, and he really helped Americans experience it because he realized he was sharing black culture. So, Salvation's an early memoir. It's a work of nonfiction, though we aren't so sure how true it is. It is a story written in first-person narrative. However, it is the adult voice looking back on a childhood experience. And two of the themes of the story are truthfulness and peer pressure. The plot of the story is a young Langston Hughes is told he will be saved. That should be heaven. My typing sometimes is a little bit not so good. To heaven when he sees Jesus. He takes the story literally and waits for Jesus to appear before his eyes. He realizes after waiting and waiting that he just has to tell everyone he saw Jesus and they will leave him alone. He doesn't quite understand that he did not literally need to see Jesus and feels betrayed by his family and friends that they are claiming to be Christians and going to heaven, but none has seen Jesus. This lie devastates young Langston and lingers with him far into adulthood. So he finds a sense of, falsehood, a sense of lying in the heart of Christianity. So our main character is Langston himself as a young man. He is dynamic, changing in the beginning to the end of the story in a little bit of a negative fashion. He becomes disillusioned. He feels betrayed and becomes depressed and even angry at the world around him. All the other characters in the story are secondary and they're pretty static. They all remain the same. They're all professing knowledge of the truth, even though Langston realizes he has the truth and, well, the truth's not that pretty. Fact is that no one has seen Jesus, but yet they claim to. So, questions for you to ponder. Have you ever felt betrayed by a lie told, even an innocent lie? The finding out that this lie is accepted is devastating to Langston. Is there a sense that people feel that way about things like this? Or is he kind of exaggerating a story? And does young Langston seem too naive in believing that he will actually see Jesus? And that should be two O's. So is he too naive? Is he, being too literal here? How does Langston feel about religion at the end of this story? Is he missing the point of religion? Isn't the very definition of faith believing in the unseen? Langston's asking religion to do something that it isn't meant to do, and that is be believable. You're not supposed to see Jesus. You're just supposed to believe in him. What about humor in this story? How does humor work in the story, and what effect does it have on the reader? Because this story is kind of funny, and the scenario is kind of funny. If you think about it, it's this play on words. Seeing Jesus isn't something people actually do. In fact, some people could be, put away in asylums if they claim to have actually seen Jesus. But yet that's what's demanded of Langston. And he can't come to grips with the reality that demand can't be met. Compare this with young Goodman Brown, who kind of feels the same betrayal. But young Goodman Brown's betrayal is believing in something that he may not have really seen. Did he actually go in the woods with the devil? Or is that just something he thought he did? Whereas Langston feels betrayed not because the people around him, he has seen their truth, but because he's seen the truth of reality and realized the people around him are lying. So it's kind of an interesting comparison with young Goodman Brown here. All right, remember, you have to pick one of your characters to write your journal on, and we will talk again next week.